What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 30 of Narwhals. My name's Drew Wilson.
Kieran Flanagan.
And with us today, we've got Ashok Kamal.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. Good evening, depending
Yes.
on your longitude and latitude.
Yes, depending on wherever you are.
Depends on where this episode comes out.
Yes. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you doing in this room? What are you doing here?
Well, I'm not a narwhal, so I'm actually not sure.
You're not a speared dolphin?
Let me flip the script, actually, right off the bat. What is a narwhal, and why is this show called Narwhals? Or is there an origin? I mean, I read comic books as a kid, and there would always be the origin issue when, Logan became Wolverine.
Episode 30 is our origin issue.
Okay,
Yes.
well, then I think that's appropriate. 30 is a milestone.
Yeah, so we started originally in 2014 with the idea of interviewing people that were doing similar stuff to us. So we both code, design, and run our own businesses, side projects, all that kind of stuff. So let's interview those specific kind of people. And after not too long,
We ran out.
we ran out of those.
We didn't even start interviewing. It was just you and me for
Yeah.
9 or 10 episodes. And then we decided to.
Yep. And so that's what it started out as. And then we took a long break, and then we took a long break again, kind of unintentionally, but I was in RV traveling, and so it was difficult. And so when we kicked it off again 10 episodes ago, we decided, let's go ahead and make this more like a chat show. Keep the name, keep all that kind of jazz because it's cool. But we'll just chat with people about interesting people. They don't necessarily have to be in tech, but we'll just chat. Show.
There's at least some tangential startup connection.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of that's more the definition in this second season.
Yep.
Yeah.
Season 2.
Season
2 years later.
Well, then I must acknowledge I'm not a narwhal by your definition, because I don't code and I can't design stuff. At least not enough to ship product. But I am an entrepreneur, so I'm one of the three. So I guess I'm more like a humpback whale, let's say, something like that.
We should come up with different whale types for each type of person.
This guy's totally a humpback.
He's a humpback.
I'm all humpback.
Yeah.
I admit it. So yes, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been starting and running my own companies for more than 15 years now. I started my first real company in college. Grew up in Boston. It was a hip hop record label called Raptivism. We used hip hop as a channel to discuss what we thought were important social issues. So our first album was called No More Prisons. It was about the prison industrial complex, and we got together a bunch of rappers, some of whom were famous at the time, some of whom ended up becoming famous, like Kanye West and Common, that were kind of in the underground scene, back in the mid to late 90s was when we were doing this. And that was my first taste at not only entrepreneurship, but what today is referred to as social entrepreneurship. So trying to use, in our case, business, for-profit business, as a vehicle to address and hopefully solve important issues. So in the next 15 plus years that followed, I started and ran another handful of companies in a variety of spaces, from a nonprofit youth development organization to a crowdfunding platform for entrepreneurs to recycling technology. I've had a very up and down, kind of, I would say, path. If you look at like my LinkedIn, it seems really chaotic.
Yeah.
But the common thread, kind of through all of my ventures is the social enterprise side of it. So some reflection of my personal values that I'm trying to fuse into the venture to do something more than just making money. Of course, making money is fundamental, but it's not the sole purpose for anything that I've done. And what I found, and I think a lot of successful people, around me, what I've seen is when you do something because you're passionate about it, the paradox is that you end up making the most money. And that's definitely been the case, for me.
What was the recycling stuff you did?
Yeah, so I just came back from Houston last night. The reason
Houston. If you're in New York, it's Houston. It is. There's Houston Street.
That's
New York.
right.
We won't call it Houston Street.
In fact, you could say my story was going from Houston to Houston because the record label Raptivism was literally on Houston Street.
Look at that.
We were on
How did you
Houston.
know that?
From Houston to Houston.
Yeah, so that's Lower East Side of New York, baby. I've spent many, many years there. Yesterday, I got back from Houston, and the reason is when I was an MBA student in New York, I was in a business plan competition that Rice University hosts. It's the biggest one in the world. It's about a $2 million now payout over 3 days. Forbes calls it the World Series and Super Bowl for student entrepreneurs. So it's big. It's in, I think, year 12 right now. So I had applied for the competition with the very first generation of the recycling business. When I was in business school, we were actually making backpacks out of recycled plastic bottles. That was our business plan as first-year MBA students. And we got accepted into this competition. We were pretty surprised, but we went out there and we didn't do very well in the top 40 of the competition. So 500 companies apply, or student companies apply. They pick 40. You come down there, and the top 6 or so get hundreds of thousands, if not millions.
Do you have to have like a prototype with you, or is it just paper, like just a business plan?
Yeah, at this level, the RBPC, the Rice Business Plan Competition, most of the companies have either already won a local competition or have a prototype, or, as I found out yesterday, going full circle, have even raised in some cases $500,000. It's continued to sort of level up over the years. 6 years ago when I was in it, there weren't necessarily companies that had already raised their seed round. Now there are because it's continued to get so big. But we did have a prototype. So you're the best of the best in your area to make it to Rice. That's kind of the format. So we got down there, and like I said, we didn't win the actual competition. I mean, most of the companies that do win, sort of the big money there are life science or material science.
Enterprise scheduling software. I'm just kidding.
I don't know if they've made it yet, but there's some software companies that do well, but they're generally pretty fully baked. We had a backpack made out of recycled plastic bottles that we were making for kids. So we were, it was like going to a gunfight, with a
backpack.
With a backpack made for kids.
With a Pez container, not even.
Yeah.
So although that product never ended up really making it, it introduced us to Waste Management, which is the biggest recycling company in the world and is headquartered in Houston, and they're a sponsor of the RBPC. So within a year from us meeting them there, we were cultivating them to try and get basically a sales contract, and we pivoted the company when they told us essentially, we like the ideas that you guys have, but we're not a product company. We don't sell backpacks.
Yeah.
Why don't you come and take over our, at that time, sort of digital recycling properties, so the Facebook, all the social channels, work with us on developing some apps, some software to engage people in recycling, which was the whole purpose of the backpack. So the reason that we created the backpack, it was a tool to open up a discussion with children about recycling. So that was one way to do it. Another way was to, essentially work on the marketing channels of the biggest recycler in the world. It was just a huge step up for us. So when Waste Management gives you a nice contract to run their social media and develop green technologies for them, you stop doing backpacks and you start doing that. And that's the pivot that we made. So we kind of went from soft goods to software.
That's an easy pivot when they tell you what the pivot is.
Yeah.
Like,
this is your pivot. And
do this now for us.
That's awesome. Could you imagine, though, if Waste Management had their own product line? You go on a Target, man, I got my Waste Management bag made out of old poo-poo.
So in working with them it was a couple of years, but we worked, within Waste. They actually do poop to power technology. So they have a sort of internal VC. They call it organic growth, and they invest in a number of sort of frontier recycling technologies. So the bottles to anything, bottles are turned into all kinds of stuff.
Poop to plate,
lumber.
It's recycled plates.
That's a marketing contract I wouldn't take. You couldn't pay me enough for that one. But they do a lot of their investment is how to take recycled materials and turn it into something of higher value, whether it's energy or water or a number of different things. So it was a great experience that then kind of introduced me into the Houston community, which is growing. And interestingly, now having spent some time in San Diego, I would say Houston and San Diego are the two most similar startup ecosystems that I've been a part of, because one, they're both big on life science. For example, J Labs has a incubator here in San Diego, and of course they have one in the Bay, they have one in Boston, but they also have one in Houston. The size of the startup economies here are comparable. You don't have the Bay or New York, or even LA scale, but they're still, relevant, and their growth rates are comparable. So Houston and San Diego are surprisingly, similar in a lot of ways.
Are they at a similar maturity point? Like, have they?
Right. Yeah, I would say they're both in that high growth kind of stage.
Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And is Dallas? How does that compare to Houston in those terms?
Yeah, so I've spent some time in Dallas as well, although more kind of in Houston. I think Dallas is a little bit different. Certainly, for example, don't have the life science sort of blueprint in Dallas. Dallas is a lot more retail and kind of legacy Fortune 500 company oriented. So there's a lot of big old school sort of Fortune 500s that are headquartered in Dallas. In fact, I think there's more Fortune 500s headquartered in Dallas than any other city. But they tend to be coming from legacy industries, not the sort of super high tech innovation.
Yeah, I asked because I haven't spent much time in Houston, but I have in Dallas, so I was wondering what the two are compared like. But that's interesting that it's close to San Diego. So you've started some companies, all that jazz, but you grew up in Boston, but you don't have an accent.
People always say that. Yeah. So the
Say a couple
reality of
words.
Boston is there are certain communities where you get
Ben Affleck doesn't have an accent.
Right. He's from Cambridge, which is one of the places that you don't get as strong of an accent. And I actually went to elementary school, middle school in Cambridge. I grew up in the heart of the city of Boston, so actually near where the Red Sox play. I'm a Red Sox fan. And it's more like South Boston, Charlestown, Easty, Westy, where you get that strong towny accent.
Well, what's crazy is like you go outside of that and you go up north and everyone's got a massive accent. Like in Maine and everybody up there's got like a huge accent. So it's like that one little pocket of the certain cities in Boston that I can avoid it, but everyone else in the state has got this accent.
Yeah.
Somehow that was the one little pocket so I could avoid it.
Yeah. So I didn't get the accent.
Yeah. What was it like growing up there? Like in the city of Boston?
Well, I grew up in the 80s, so that was a kind of tumultuous time for Boston. It had one of the highest murder rates in the country per capita. It was one of the only cities on the East Coast that gangbang. In those days, a lot of the gang activity was out here, LA and obviously California and Chicago. Boston had its own local gangs, and they were pretty influential, in the city. And unlike, say, Crips and Bloods by color, they were all identified by sports teams. So, for example,
that is such a Boston thing.
I'll give you an example. So, the Goya Boys, which was a gang from Mission Hill, you know what sports team they wore? Georgetown Hoyas.
Yeah, all right. Makes sense.
Is that basketball?
Yeah, it's college.
It's college.
Yeah.
But yes.
The Heath Street Projects, which is actually where Bobby Brown is from, they would wear the Miami Heat insignia. So on and so forth. Basically,
That's
every
wild.
neighborhood had its own.
Am I thinking of the
sports
same
team.
Bobby Brown you're thinking of?
Yes, you are.
The makeup one?
No, you're not. No, sir, you are not.
The only Bobby.
We're gonna have to ask you next time
Okay.
to verify.
I think she is Bobbi,
Yeah.
I believe.
okay.
I'm talking about Bobby with a Y,
okay.
ex-husband of the late Whitney Houston.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I see. I didn't know. That's why I was like, wait a second.
I've
You
never
just
even
went
heard-
straight
I don't
from
even know
sports
yours.
makeup.
Right.
Well, my wife used to wear Bobby Brown makeup. I remember seeing like a little Bobby Brown thing.
She may even be from Dallas. I don't know why I think that, but there's somebody Google out there tweet at us. Where is Bobby with an I from? Bobby with a Y is probably a better illustration of the Boston that I grew up in.
Get us a picture
So-
of Bobby with an eye in a Heat jersey,
Right.
just to further confuse things.
That would be perpetrating.
Yeah.
That's what we call that. So yeah, I mean, Boston was an interesting city to grow up in. Obviously, it's got a lot of history. There's a lot of great universities. I had ended up going to Boston University. I had a scholarship. I was a Boston public school kid. So, I think there were a lot of advantages also to growing up in Boston, that you're surrounded by smart people, and then, kind of in, I guess, what would then become more of a theme in my life, the innovation economy in Boston was, really one of the only major, kind of hubs in those days, in the 80s and 90s, where, the whole Route 128, they call it Belt, that's sort of the Palo Alto of Boston. Now a lot of things have moved into downtown Boston the same way that, a lot of Palo Alto startups have moved into San Francisco. But in those days, I mean, a lot of the biggest companies, technology in the world came from Boston. So it was sort of in my, I would say, DNA, to kind of be attracted to and to, follow that, sort of spirit for the rest of my career. So I'm a proud Bostonian, put it that way. I'm glad I ended up moving to New York City, lived there for 15 years, working on Houston Street. But originally I'm born and raised in the Fenway.
Speaking of sports teams defining your conflicts, moved to New York for a while.
I still rock my Red Sox hat, my jersey, going to Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
I lived in Queens, so I lived closer to Shea Stadium, or what's now Citi Field,
right.
By the Mets.
Yeah.
I still rep the Red Sox.
How does the West Coast compare?
So I chose to move, and for me,
the sports is the same down here. The sports enthusiasm is just on the same level.
Yeah, well, I went to Petco, at the end of last baseball season. I guess it was around September for a San Diego Venture Group event.
There were 7 people in the stands.
There were a couple thousand people in the stands. I would say a good number of that was in the corporate booth, with this group, and I was the only one outside watching the baseball game because no one gave a crap about what was happening on the field.
You have to remind people that it's going on.
It was the Red Sox versus the Padres, so I actually cared. It was a chance for me to see my home team in my new home, but everybody else was having,
Who won?
The Red Sox did.
Yeah.
They were playing the Padres.
Yeah. That's the answer to that question is 95% of the time is the other team.
Whoever's playing the Padres.
I like the Padres. I play fantasy baseball. They've got some exciting young talent, so I think it'll get better over time.
And we just lost the only other sports team that we had, the only other professional sports team.
We did.
Right.
The Chargers going to
Speaking
LA.
of the enthusiasm for sports in San Diego, they just left.
Yep, because they didn't get the stadium they wanted.
Right. Well, it seems
They
like
needed one with bigger fish tanks.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is they need.
The startup scene and the sports scene here, I think, are going in different directions. So thankfully, this is not a podcast about professional athletes. It's startup. Right. It's Narwhals.
Right.
We'd be a lot less, I think, enthusiastic if we were doing these. I don't know what the equivalent would be for a sad San Diego sports team, but it wouldn't be a narwhal. It's like a magical. In fact, I didn't even think it was real. I thought a narwhal was mystical, kind of creation of Elf the movie.
No, man, there's other people that think that.
Movie,
other people think that that narwhals aren't real. A buddy of mine doesn't think they're real. He even worked on National Geographic stuff, and he's like, "Oh, this stuff ain't real." And I was like, "Dude, it's real."
It's very real.
It's good knowledge to have, because if a kid ever comes up to me, and asks, "Hey, what's a narwhal?" You don't want to give them the wrong answer. I try to accumulate as much random knowledge as possible. Yeah, you don't want to say it doesn't exist, kid.
Grow up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that'll stick with them forever. It's
well, dude, way back when, people would grab narwhal tusks, slice them off, and then they would give them to what are they, like royalty in different countries, and they would tell them that they were unicorn horns, because up in the north they would find these unicorns, and they would cut off the horns and be like, here's a unicorn horn. Mm-hmm. But really it's a narwhal horn. And so they themselves also kind of became mythic in that same kind of way for that reason.
Okay.
Unicorns obviously aren't real. Narwhals are. However, man, if you look up some ancient horses from the north, you will see that there were horses at one point, we have remains of them, that had a horn on their forehead, but it was like stout. It was like a stout horn. It wasn't like a big, long
the nubbin
tusk. Yeah. So
this really is the origin episode.
Good history there.
Yeah, wow.
It's got to be hard to lop off a narwhal's horn.
Well, man, what you do is
gotta
you kill
ride
that thing and you pull it on a boat, and then it's not going to move.
Gotcha.
Okay. That's what they do. Whaling,
I picture it as more like a rodeo, kind of on top
Right
of that. You're going in and out of the water, and no, but I'm anti-poaching. I think for the record, we all are. Right? I'm pro-animal.
Yeah,
personally.
this went weird fast.
Well,
this origin story.
Speaking of that kind of stuff, something similar is why I'm talking about it. Rhinos, their horns are obviously very sought after in other countries, like in the Philippines, and I don't remember if it was Indo or not. I was reading an article about it, but people there, it's like a status symbol for like your wealth. They want rhino horns, and so. In South Africa, there are places that actually breed rhinos just for their horns, and they cut them off right before like the actual skin line where it would hurt. So you get these horns, and they ship them off and sell them, and then the rhino grows back. So you can get like 8 to 10 horns in a rhino's lifetime, and so they actually like have thousands of rhinos roaming in there. It's like cattle herding except for rhinos for their horns. But I guess I was reading the article and about they're trying to like make it so you don't have to poach, but actually it's making it so people poach more often because they're creating a new demand because now there's so many, people can get it cheaper, so people want it more. And what they found is that no matter, like the reason people can still poach is because no matter the price, people will pay it for a rhino horn. So I guess it's like encouraging the poaching, so they're trying to.
Well, so this is a problem that maybe we could solve through synthetic biology. So one of the things you asked me how I feel about moving to San Diego is excited because I think there's a lot going on here in the sort of next frontier of innovation. I'd come from New York, so I was there for 15 years and just wanted to kind of switch up my lifestyle. That's why I moved over here. And now, what I see happening in San Diego for me is really invigorating because, it's growing fast. So coming back to that, kind of trajectory that is happening in other places, like Houston, other fast-growing startup communities. But then I think also in San Diego, important work is going on in fields like genomics and synthetic biology, and kind of these really truly disruptive, like not just enterprise SaaS. Right. And I love enterprise SaaS guys. I've been one myself. But the innovation here and the opportunity that San Diego has to be the leader, so not even a fast follower, but the leader in, for example, the Internet of DNA. So what I'd call IOD, as opposed to IoT. San Diego can win in that space, and that's a huge multi-billion-dollar world-changing space.
Right. I just bought 23andMe for myself, my wife, and my kids. So we'll check it out because 23andMe like 2 days ago finally got allowed, or maybe it was 3 days ago, finally got permission from the FDA to do the health research and actually show that data. Before, when 23andMe started, they were just doing it, and the FDA is like, no, man, you can't tell people what the health's going to be. Yeah. And so then they could only do the ancestry stuff. And then just like 3 days ago, they got approved again. So now you can actually get your health stuff. And there's another startup called Color, not the photo sharing
$40 million disaster.
Disaster that was.
Not that,
but they bought the domain from them. And it is pretty much the same thing as 23andMe. You do a DNA sample, except it's different. And I know this because I just read up about it 2 days ago when I bought this stuff. It's specific to cancer, and they have a different, more robust DNA testing infrastructure. So it's actually better than 23andMe in that aspect, but it only focuses on cancer.
So when you say better, you mean at detecting, like
higher resolution,
it finds markers.
It just has better genomics, better gene sequencing machines that actually have higher resolution to actually be able to detect this stuff. So the other difference is it's 100% physician led. So you have to either bring your own physician who's saying, all right, get these testings done, blah, 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 and who's going to look over the results as soon as they come in. Or if you don't have one, they give you a physician when you go to the site. So that way, as soon as you get results, everything's actionable, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's all purely for cancer, that kind of stuff.
This is all like predictive, right? Like these.
Well, it's not.
This is different from like CRISPR or something that's like, we're going to fix this.
This
is more like.
This is like.
Here's so you have a guess at what might happen.
It's analytical.
Well, it's not necessarily I'm sure they do predictions, but it's also like this is what's in your DNA right now.
Yeah,
this
you have
is
a marker for this. You have an 80% chance of
analytics.
Yeah, it's like this is what is in you at this moment, and then of course, they can predict stuff, especially as more and more data comes on board. But
right, and that's sort of the IOD, the Internet of DNA, is that convergence of of analytics and storage and kind of intelligence, and data science. I mean, that's why this space is becoming really exciting right now.
And it's interesting that it's happening here,
right?
And like what we do and who we talk to, we're always kind of like, oh, biotech, like it has all the money here, it's got all the power in San Diego, but at the same time, it's like. These people are literally going to change the world, like as we know it. Like
a lot of the
within our lifetime,
machines are built
very soon,
right?
Yeah,
and
it's going to be impacted by this stuff. And like, I'm not going to build an ad network that's going to positively impact the world the way that one little thing out of Sorrento Valley might. Like, it's crazy.
But I think the software community has a major role to play in this space. So that's kind of the next wave of biotech is the synthesis between software and science. That's why this is exciting, and that's why San Diego, can be now a real player.
Yeah, there's a company called Backblaze, which back in the day, I used for backup storage before like Amazon had anything available, yada, yada, yada. It was really cheap. It was like $9 a month back then. That was really cheap to store a lot of data on their servers, just like it's a backup thing. I put some stuff up there, never touched it. Better stuff came along, which, by the way, if you're looking for a good backup solution, you should use Amazon Drive because you can get unlimited storage for $60 a year. It's insane.
Amazon Drive?
Yeah, it's got all the same stuff as Dropbox, and you can like, it's way better. It's just insanely good. Huh. Anyways, if you're looking.
Was that a native ad?
That was a native ad.
It sounded like it.
But I'm not.
Use Plasso.
We're not sponsored by Amazon.
It was well indicated.
It was pretty good.
But so anyway, so Backblaze, I get their email drips, like the drip emails, and one of them was about how they're working on a product with DNA storage.
Right.
So being able to store stuff, which I'm like, dang, that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And I'm seeing stuff like that too. There's a company called Dodo Omnidata that's actually based here, and they're using synthetic, basically DNA to store data. So it's that, migration from magnetic tape, into DNA as a storage mechanism.
Right.
Yo, imagine a future where all your data is stored inside your own body. Inside your own body. That'd be
inside your own fingernail.
Yeah.
That's all the space that you need
You're
to
like,
store.
This is dedicated and as it grows.
Right.
It's
I think you can store the whole city of San Diego, in your left
Don't
foot.
clip your nails.
Yeah, right.
Lose all your nails.
Population just went down.
These are my kids' photos.
Right.
No, but you for reals could.
The future's exciting, man. The future's exciting.
You for reals could.
Yeah.
Because all you'd have to do is dedicate some area of skin that you would just put under a little machine that would just
Yeah, file sharing is going to get weird.
scan it.
Here, let
Bump
me,
fingernails.
let me just rip you off this piece of
Skin.
skin. Scan this.
Oh, gross.
Eat this epidermis.
But
Like the Matrix. So cannibals, the reason the cannibals ate other people isn't because of hunger. They ate other people because all of them believed that if they ate you, they would gain your knowledge and your power.
Right.
And it was a way to show their power over
They
you.
were ahead of their time, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So what we could do in the future is we could eat each other's skin and we would get each other's knowledge and power. Wouldn't that be great?
It sounds amazing.
I'm about to start investing in nail clippers because that's going to be, you can't swap nails without nail clippers.
Yeah, that's good. Good idea.
Sell picks and shovels and a gold rush, baby. That's my one entrepreneurial tip for the day.
Yeah, man. No, but
Invest in nail clippers.
But as you were talking about before with synthetic biology, there's those different groups of scientists who all separately came up with their own synthetically grown hamburgers.
Right.
There's like 4 different groups that did it. And they got the price down, I think, like $250,000 to make a synthetically grown hamburger. And I was like, man, that's what I want to do.
Right.
So I started researching into it a couple years ago. And I talked to a guy I know who is a graduate from a university in Australia. I can't remember the name of it all of a sudden, Sydney or something like that. But anyways, he was in there he's a microbiologist. And I was talking to him. I'm like, can we just like start a company and start making like meat? Because like what they do for fermentation for yogurt is, they take the milk and they put it in these giant vats and they put in the yeast and then it eats it all and it makes it all yogurt. And you can just like industrialize this stuff. I was like, could we do that same thing for the meat and like make it cheaper?
Or narwhal horns.
Or narwhal horns.
Synthetic ones.
And he's like, yeah, you can, but no one would eat it. I'm like, why? He's like, well, because, there's like a stigma. What all those burgers that were made, the reason that they were able to grow those cells fast enough, right? Because you take like a stem cell and you start the growth process and it grows really rapidly.
Yeah.
The reason it was able to grow rapidly and the way to make it grow faster is to make the cells more and more cancerous. Mm-hmm. So it's actually cancerous cells that are the ones that are growing fast enough to make like a piece of meat. So it's like, that's like where the science is at. And unless you somehow think of a totally different way, that's where it's always going to be. So I'm like, dang, man, that's crazy.
I got good news for you. So there's a company, for example, called Memphis Meats. Mm-hmm. They chose to use, kind of the association to make it seem that real. They've raised like $50-60 million, and they're basically doing that without making the burger toxic. Coming on the market soon, like in the next like year.
I wonder what they're using to grow it. So how they would grow cells so quickly without them being cancerous. That's what cancer cells are.
4+ years later from when it sounds like you first learned about it, a lot has happened in that time, particularly in these spaces of synthetic biology.
Yeah.
So.
And if you could use something, like like CRISPR is one technology, but there's a couple others now that are even more targeted, using not just because CRISPR uses the actual proteins process and the way the DNA replicates and the way those little guys come along the chain and like fix things. There's other ways to use it right now with viruses that go in there and target specific things and cut them out. That kind of thing. You can engineer a virus to go.
That's essentially what CRISPR is, right?
Yeah, but CRISPR uses the actual DNA's process itself. It doesn't use viruses to do it. It uses the actual process that I can't remember the name of it, but when the DNA splits and creates another one, mitosis, but there's something else in there that it does.
This has been an exciting episode of This Week in Genetics.
Yeah,
three guys who don't have PhDs.
There's this thing in there, and I swear it's that's how they do it.
Yeah.
We should
Really good summary though, Drew. I mean, you know your stuff.
Yeah.
I can tell for being sarcastic.
Sign me up.
No, I'm being serious.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have one of the burgers. We'll have one of the Memphis Meats burgers.
Memphis Meats.
Yeah, I would
We should do a
try.
Memphis Meats
Because
party.
You don't have
Shape
to,
meets Memphis Meats.
Yes, and everyone has to eat this crazy burger.
Let's
I would
do it
because
I'm in.
people are spending so much money, so much land, so much water, so much everything to grow these giant beasts just to use some of them, their body parts for meat. And it's like, why couldn't you just grow this stuff? I mean, people don't quite, like everyone's against GMOs and all this because don't quite grasp the fact that everything we see, feel, touch, hear, well, not hear, but everything we see, touch is made of chemicals. You are made of chemicals. Everything is chemicals. It's just different chemicals are toxic to our specific organs, right? If you swap out those organs with something else, suddenly no longer toxic, right? Same thing you're doing to plants. Like you're suddenly making things toxic or not toxic to that specific organism, right? And so the same thing applies with these meats. Like if you can make it genetically the same and chemically the same as the patty from McDonald's, it's not going to do anything different in your body at all, ever. It's impossible. It's like the fear that people have of irradiated food. Irradiated food means they cook that food using radiation. It does not. And radiation, what is that? That's heat. That's all it is. It's an element that breaks down, and then heat during that that breakdown process. Heat is expanded out of that, and boom, heats stuff up. That's what radiation is. So if a food is irradiated, and you look on the back of the label, which tons of food in the grocery store is irradiated, you'll see the little fish with the cross through it. That means that there's no radiation in it. It just used radiation to heat it up, right? And so, but people are still kind of afraid of that. But I'm like, you don't understand. That's not how radiation works, you know? So I feel like it's the same thing with meat. Like people just don't fully grasp how things work. And I feel like that education needs to get in place so the whole populace can be around the science community and be like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you ain't got to convince me, player. I'm vegetarian. I'm vegetarian. I already am. If I wasn't, I would be walking out of here as a vegetarian.
I'm curious. Would you be a vegetarian if there was synthetic meat?
I'm already a vegetarian, so I'd be an even more enthusiastic vegetarian because, as Buckminster Fuller said, you don't replace an old system with words. You have to use an alternative. So, me personally, I'm fine eating a tofu burger or, a lentil burger if I want a burger. But there are people out there, and I understand, they want to have that texture, that flavor, of
Something
a beef burger. They don't necessarily have a high fidelity replacement right now. I would like to see the marketplace deliver that option, and it will. And I think that will also, kind of make things better for all of us in terms of the environment, in terms of animal rights.
I'm not kidding.
And human health, for that matter.
In terms of like the Earth's surface and the Earth itself as a planet, the largest impact we could have would be to get rid of all the cattle. Like it takes up more space than anything else that humans use space for.
Right.
It's crazy.
And the methane.
Yeah.
Yep.
They fart.
Cows burp and fart like they're really rude, actually.
They're super rude.
They're rude.
But yeah, it'd be quite awesome.
We haven't even gotten to Tech Coast Angels yet, by the way.
I always talk about that. This is, by the way, this is the funnest podcast I've done in a long time.
Anytime Drew
And
goes
I've
on
learned
a
a
rant,
lot. I mean, Drew's science.
he goes on a rant. Yeah,
I love this.
I was gonna say something too. I was gonna start trying to battle you on some of those points, but you were in it. I wasn't gonna.
Battle me.
I was gonna get in your way.
Battle me.
I like it.
Let's start our science battles.
Give that man an SAT right now.
This is good. This was good.
What were you gonna say though? I'm very curious.
No, I'm gonna say I'm all for you. Like I'm on the same boat. I think it's an education thing. Like I think there's a lot of stigmas around certain things, and I think there's a lot of misinformation around certain things, and that's intentional. I feel like that's been the way that it's been designed for a long time is to have a misconception about what this is or what this isn't.
Yeah. Well, so it is an education thing, but that's only the start, right? So just like most social problems, and this as a social entrepreneur, you have to think systematically. It's not just education; it's also distribution, which equals access, right? So talking about a company like Memphis Meats, what they are planning to do is, sell these fake burgers into the Whole Foods, into even the TGI Fridays of the world. Like energy. Right now, electric cars, are experiencing kind of a huge uptick because you can actually get your car charged, at the average, corner.
Yeah.
If you didn't have the chargers, then you wouldn't have the access to be able to, maintain an electric car. So you have to think that way in trying to solve any problem. It's not just about education. Yeah. People have to have access to it, and that access has to be affordable as well.
Right. Yeah. How many Tesla owners have a Tesla because it checks off that social impact box for them?
Yep.
There's got to be a percent. I mean, I'm sure plenty do, but there's got to be a percentage that they couldn't care less. That's not why they're doing it.
Yeah.
But the accessibility, we still get the benefit. Like the world still benefits from you from doing this, but you wouldn't have it. You wouldn't do it in the first place if it weren't affordable and accessible.
Right. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen over the years with, social entrepreneurs making, is trying to impose on people a conscience penalty.
Right.
So in other words, it's a product that maybe it's, made from sustainable, materials, but it breaks easier, or it's way more expensive, or it's hard to find. You can't expect that. The product needs to be good, cost effective, delivered fast, say two out of three of those things, and eco-friendly. Yep. That's when you have, a winner on your hands. So it should be the sort of third strike, kind of in the value proposition.
And I think those are really rare to come across, just because typical enterprise, typical capitalism is all about, getting it cheaper, faster.
Right. Cost.
And so they're really good at bringing the cost down. And that means that without taking into consideration the environment, all kind of stuff. So getting something that can do better than that is pretty hard to find. With Tesla, we found that,
right. And that's what it just takes at scale, these, people like Elon Musk, because if you factor in the externalities of coal and oil-based, economy, then it's a lot more expensive than the, say, $3 we pay at the pump. And, if anybody's been to Europe, they've been paying $8-9 at the pump in, equivalent currency for 10-15 years, right? But if you factor in, kind of those additional costs, in, say, health, and the subsidies that go into fossil fuels, the price is artificially, kind of low that we pay here. Now things are starting to change where, solar is actually reaching parity with, other forms of energy production. But it's taken a while because our infrastructure is based on, these sort of archaic industrial systems. So it just takes a lot longer to, not only create the alternative, but replace it, where there's a very, kind of established, infrastructure that goes the other way.
Even the way that it's talked about is still like super archaic. Like when you hear about it, you hear what you're supposed to hear. Like I just read there's some stat that Arby's employs more people than the entire coal industry in the U.S. It's like you would never think that. Like,
no way.
That's not the way you're supposed to think about it, right?
Crazy.
It's wild.
Huh.
Is that true? Somebody verify that.
Yeah, somebody verify that and get back to us somehow.
Yeah.
I don't look at the live chat. But what you had mentioned, like, about social guilt, and I think the organic movement is probably the most successful thing at that, right? They give you social guilt about, like, hey, eat organic, everything else is killing the world, and it's way more expensive. So arguably it's a better product, depending on which side of the fence you're on. However, it is way more expensive, cost prohibitive, and it's much less widely available, I guess that's how I'll say it, than non-organic foods, right? And so people who don't make a lot of money can't, like, buy organic on a daily basis all the time. Yet on Facebook, they're always getting that social guilt because there's always people reposting these things about, these diets you're supposed to be on, and go organic, look at all these bad GMOs, all that kind of jazz. And it's actually, I feel like, worked, because now you go into like a Vaughn's or Ralph's, there's one aisle of organic that used to be like one aisle like 4 or 5 years ago is now most of the store. Whole Foods going out of business because all these other grocery stores are charging cheap, like significantly cheaper prices than Whole Foods. And I feel like that whole thing has been like extraordinarily successful. And I feel like organic, like, the pitch is that it's better and all around, because it's better for you as a human being to consume this because there's no GMOs in it, there's no hormones, all these things that can negatively affect you, which I feel like is true, right? There's some merit to it, and on the flip side, a lot of the stuff isn't tested thoroughly enough to know for sure if these things would negatively affect us. And in some cases, they're just straight up lying, right? Like these GMOs don't affect us like whatsoever.
So I think take organic foods, it's still under 5% of the total, kind of food consumption. And to me, it could actually have been a lot higher if instead of focusing on, the stick, there was more of an emphasis on the carrot in the positioning. So with Bennu, which was the recycling rewards company, we would always say that we focus on fortune, fun, and fame, not guilt and shame, because we found in the campaigns and the research that we did that people are actually more responsive to the positive reasons for a behavior than the negative reasons. Yes, if something, is bad for you, it's fair to point that out, but that doesn't actually create sustained behavior change. So, for example, in our recycling campaigns that we would do, let's say on college campuses, we would provide students with rewards and kind of exciting, we call it gamifying recycling, to increase their the recycled production in their dorms. And we'd pit the dorms against each other. We'd pit the campuses against each other. We'd create leaderboards. We would sort of like how Foursquare does. Again, it's gamifying recycling. Ultimately, I think that's a better approach, focusing on the positives than the negatives. And I think if we had done that from the outset, whether it's alternative energy production, whether it's organic foods, whether it's the recycling rate, all these things that, I'd like to see much further along than they are, they'd be 3, 4, 5, 10x, higher than they are right now.
Yeah, there's no way imposed guilt can create reliable, sustainable behavior.
Right.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's hard because there's so many players involved. It's like such like a Wild West thing. Like there wasn't like one unified body.
But my point is Drew, you're a family man, but let's just say you weren't a married man. Would you be more likely to go and find your wife by your Aunt Ethel telling you at every Thanksgiving that, she thinks you should be married by now, or by your Aunt Susie introducing you to a number of lovely ladies?
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. No, for sure. I think I'm just saying like it's crazy how from social guilt, like it was able to even move any amount.
Right. Absolutely.
Like it did.
Yep.
Because like I was,
and that just shows the demand. I mean, none of these companies are stupid, right? Like you can talk about the grocery store. If you see that they've increased, and they have, by 10 times the amount of, natural products that they sell, that's because there's consumer demand, right? I mean, Target, every decision they make is very scientifically, driven, and they don't waste a square foot of space on their retail floors. So that just shows kind of the demand that's out there. What, I would like to see happen is this crossing the chasm of that being, kind of the fringe, the green ghetto, to that being the mainstream. So for me, the question is, how do we mainstream, kind of these healthy and sustainable and equitable behaviors? And that's, for me personally, what my goal as an entrepreneur is all about, my personal mission, regardless of what I'm doing, whether it's on the investment side, whether it's on the startup side, whether it's on the management side, that's what fuels me as an entrepreneur.
How do you, this is going to change gears, and I don't know when we want to wrap this or how long we've been going, but how does that work? How does the things that interest you on a personal level, on a social level, how does that cross the gap between pitches that you hear? Like, is that something that you actively hunt for? Is that something that you actively respond to? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So, I think whether you're advising a company, whether you're investing in a company, whether you're working at a company, it's all about what value can you add. So for me personally, I can add the most value because of my network, because of my, knowledge of industry, because of my passion for, a particular project, if it fits into my, kind of framework of interest, which, for me, is about environmental stewardship, about, animal, treatment, and about health and sustainability. Those are sort of the areas that I'm, most passionate about, social justice. So I can contribute the most there. Having said that, as Tech Coast Angels, there's a wide array of sort of interests. And part of my role is to connect the membership, which just in San Diego is over 100, investors, into opportunities where they can add the most value. And that can be very different, from me. So my job is to connect those dots. So I kind of have, two lenses that I see my work through. There's what I can do as an individual, but then there's what I can do, representing TCA as a network, to help entrepreneurs succeed. And in general, I believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. So the more wins there are in San Diego, regardless of the vertical, the better it is for the overall ecosystem, which then has a contagious and virtuous effect that will solve some of the problems that I'm personally more interested in, just by having that spirit of of winning and all of the sort of associated resources that come along with that spilling into the community.
Totally. That's awesome. Yeah, we didn't even mention that you are running Tech Coast Angels. So there it is, everybody. That's who he is.
That was a long intro.
Yeah, there it is. Finally, you get it.
We had to get through that origin of Narwhals first. Forget about Ashok. Let's talk about Narwhals.
Sweet. All right. Well, that's all the time we got. Thanks, everyone, for sticking with us. Thanks, Ashok, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Super good talking.
Appreciate the opportunity. Good talking to you guys.
Yeah, we'll see y'all next time.
You guys.